occupying till he comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries.
Thanks, David. On today's broadcast, Dr. Schnitker and Carol Rushton begin a two-program series with L.A. Marzulli. He's been researching topics like prophecy and the supernatural for over 20 years, and he has a new book and DVD titled Days of Chaos. It'll be the topic for today and next weekend's programs. Here now is Dr. Schnitker and L.A. Marzulli with Part 1.
It is a great privilege to have L.A. Marzulli on the broadcast today and next week to discuss his latest book and DVD entitled Days of Chaos. I'm joined on the broadcast today by Carol Rushton, our Vice President of Social Media. It's great to have Carol with us because she is an expert on Middle East affairs. I was privileged to do some broadcasts with L.A. when I was at Southwest Radio Church, and I could not pass up the opportunity to interview L.A. regarding his latest project. This book and DVD literally make the Olivet Discourse come alive before our very eyes. Jesus predicted there that nations shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. This book and DVD chronicle the fulfillment of this and other end-time prophecies. L.A., welcome to our show today.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you in studio. As we get started today, there may be some of our listeners who are not familiar with you or your ministry. Tell us about your ministry, give your web address, and tell our listeners what motivated you to create the Days of Chaos book and DVD.
Sure. Thanks again for allowing me the opportunity. Look, I came to Yeshua about 36 years ago. I've always been interested in prophecy and actually was a student, if I can use that word, of Southwest Radio Church, Noah Hutchings. I would listen to that program faithfully on a daily, God is still on the throne, prayer changes things. And
Amen.
I would listen to Dr. Noah, on a daily basis. And I was always interested in prophecy, always interested in the prophetic word. And I basically really cut my teeth on two icons, Dr. Chuck Messler and Dr. Noah Hutchings. I mean, every day, Noah in the morning, Dr. Chuck in the afternoon. And started writing books, and I was always interested in Nephilim. That was from my late mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. His groundbreaking book, The Omega Conspiracy, was a book that completely changed my life, changed my paradigm, answered many questions from the biblical prophetic narrative that I had. And I interviewed Dr. Thomas. I received an honorary doctorate from him and also the gold medallion in 2014 from Chuck Missler, Quintanilla House. So both of those accolades from men I am very proud of, and talk about them whenever necessary. The website is lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. The new TV show, which is being aired, it's right now, it's on YouTube, it's on the blog lamarzulli.wordpress.com. It's ppsreport.com. Politics, Prophecy and the Supernatural Report.com, ppsreport.com. There's a lot of different videos. You can go to my YouTube channel, L.A. Marzulli, and up they will come. We'll be on Roku soon, and we're also going to be on VTN in Little Rock fairly shortly. Sometime early March will be our first shows. So I try to do about 3 different video updates. I just did one on the Super Bowl, one on Friday last week, talked about the up-and-coming Super Bowl and the graphic display of occult symbols everywhere, the rise of the Illuminati, and then, of course, Monday I really weighed in on the Super Bowl. And even though the Super Bowl 50 was somewhat benign, it was packed full of stuff, and that's what the 12-minute video talks about. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. The Watchers series, which, of course, Watchers 9, Days of Chaos. We are in production of Watchers 10. No title for it yet, although we've got some stuff we're kicking around. Without trying to hype your audience, it'll be the most astonishing, cutting-edge, revealing, extraordinary stuff that we've ever done. Richard and I, my good friend and the co-producer of Watchers, Richard Shaw, looking at what we have going into this show, and it's like, you've got to be kidding. Some of these chapters in the show we've talked about in other Watchers, but other things we've just sat on for years because we couldn't vet them, couldn't go with it. So Watchers 10 promises to be really extraordinary.
Wow, that's
Shameless
great.
plug. Thank you.
There you go. Well, let me also say this. You've created a very high bar with the Watchers 9
Thank you.
and Days of Chaos.
Thank you.
It's hard for me to imagine anything exceeding that. But let's get into the Days of Chaos book and DVD. We're going to focus on the program today and next week, primarily on the content of the DVD. Your book has so many things that are not even covered in the DVD. We'd have no chance of really covering that adequately. Your book literally does cover the waterfront of apocalyptic issues, that is, your DVD does, and the book. Domestic tyranny, Middle East violence, natural calamities, UFOs, Torah codes. I mean, you literally hold nothing back. Well, let's begin by talking about a military exercise that took place in 13 Western states this past summer called Jade Helm, or literally Jade Helm 15. Now, what was that all about, L.A.?
Well, interestingly enough, I have a contact from one of the alphabet agencies, and that's all I'll tell you, who I sit down with from time to time and discuss political intrigue, such as Jade Helm. The American people, certain aspects of it, no one cares. They go about their life, go to work, come home, get a six-pack, whatever. That's what people do. But then there's a small segment of the population that is looking at these events and wondering what's really going on here. And Jade Helm was scrutinized by a lot of different people. I believe, after talking with my source, but also just from my own observations, the powers that be know that we're vulnerable. They know something is coming. They know that. They know something is coming. And whatever is coming is not a good thing. And that's what Jade Helm was about. In other words, if the dollar collapses, and with the advent of the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, trying to move the global currency from the petrodollar, the default global currency of the petrodollar, to the Chinese yuan. Interestingly enough, if I can tag on that for a second, just last week, actually this week, it broke that the Iranians, this is what got Saddam whacked. The Iranians are now trading their oil for euros. That's a no-no. That's a huge no. They're breaking rank, and that's exactly. And you remember, the implications. You hear that story, most people turn the page. To me, it's a huge red flag, because what's going on is World War III. The BRICS nations, and of course Russia, is siding with the Shia branch of Islam, and the Shia is Iran. Isn't that interesting? That's why they're backing Bashar al-Assad in Syria. And the Western powers are backing the Sunni branch of Islam. So it's a very complex geopolitical scenario which we're looking at, and it's unfolding even as we speak. I mean, it is, and folks, I got to tell you something. The dollar has been dumbed down so far that when it collapses, we're $19 trillion in debt. Trump talked about that last night, and I know this is going to be, I'm kind of dating the show, but Trump talked about it after winning the New Hampshire primary. We're now $19 trillion in debt. We've got one shot to start to move the ship back the other way. And it's not from the weasels in Washington, because Obama's next, which he won't get to do, hopefully, but why is he spending the time to do it, is a $4 trillion budget. Ridiculous.
4.1 trillion.
Thank you. I stand corrected.
Over $4 trillion.
Unbelievable.
It's hard to get your mind around that kind of figure.
I can't,
And
more government programs, more taxes.
In your film, the gentleman that you spoke with mentioned that HELM stands for Homeland Eradication of Local Militia. And we don't know that. I haven't seen the documents, but he's certainly an insider. And if that is indeed what HELM stands for, it's a bit chilling for those who believe in liberty and Second Amendment issues.
Well, remember, the Obama administration has at every opportunity attempted to create some sort of laws to abolish, have stricter gun control and all this other nonsense. We already have strict gun control, okay? And if you rounded up every gun, it's not gonna create a climate in which these things won't happen, because there's always a criminal element. There's always wacko people. There are jihadists who will get the guns and do heinous acts like they did in San Bernardino. What changes everything, just like it would have changed it in Paris and the Paris attacks in just a short while back. And of course, what happened in San Bernardino, had someone been packing, everything changes, because now they're shooting back at you.
Right.
And the jihadis don't like when they get shot at.
Right.
So, but that's the only way it's going to change.
Yeah, I agree. Well, while we're talking about Iran, I'll toss the ball to Carol, and she has a couple questions about what's going on in the Middle East.
I sure do. LA, there is so much information in your Days of Chaos book and DVD. As David said, we could only scratch the surface of the many subjects that you covered in both of those. Now, on your DVD, you interviewed a prominent Christian in Iran who relayed to you some startling events occurring in that most radical Islamic country. Iranians are coming to faith to Jesus Christ in droves, and the Iranian government is very worried about this. Can you reveal to our listeners some of the amazing things going on in Iran today?
Well, we spoke with a pastor who is native-born Iranian, who came to a knowledge of Yeshua. And what, to the Iranian government, public enemy number one to the mullahs is Christianity. They're terrified of it. And the reason for this is because people change when they become Christians. And they realize that something's going on here, and they're not sure what it is, but it's contrary to Islam. And what's amazing is Jesus, Yeshua, is appearing to people, even mullahs in Iran. And this is what there's this surge of, it's basically a revival. There are many, many underground churches throughout Iran. So it's funny why we look at Iran as, what they are under Khomeini and the mullahs, this wacko, ideological, militant, jihadist, trying to set up a caliphate throughout the Middle East. There's an element that we don't hear about, where all these Iranians becoming Christians. One story which really blew us away when this man told us the story, which is live on camera. Of course, we have to black his face and disguise his voice. But he talked about in the very desolate area of Iran, there was this goat herder, whatever he was, a farmer, goat herder, like a little small stone hut, probably a dirt floor, oil lamp, that type of stuff. Very, very primitive. And he hears a knock on the door one night. So he goes, and this guy lives out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the sticks. And there's a figure there, a guy in a white robe or something, and he's kind of glowing. So what's your first cue that something's not quite right here? Anyway, the farmer or the goat herder invites him in. And they sit down and they begin to talk, and he probably serves tea because that's what they would do. But whatever happens in the course of this, the strange visitor asks, well, do you have any paper? I have something I want you to write down. So this guy gets paper and pencil, and he sits down at his little makeshift table, and this man begins to dictate to him, and he starts writing things down. Well, this goes on for hour after hour, and finally the guy falls asleep. Wakes up the next morning, and the stranger is gone. He's got, maybe 8 or 9 pages or whatever, or 5 or 6 pages written down in Farsi, and doesn't know what's going on. The next night, the knock on the door comes again. Opens the door, there's the glowing stranger. He comes in, and this goes on for a period of time. And this got back to this man that we were interviewing, and, being somewhat skeptical. So he goes out figuring let's go find out what's going on here. So he takes a drive out, or however he got to this guy's place. Remember, it's out in the desert, middle of nowhere, one-room hut type of thing. And this man greets him and tells him the story. The shining figure came night after night, and I wrote these things down, and here it is. And he hands him a sort of a manuscript. And the pastor begins to read it in Farsi and is absolutely astounded because it's the Gospel of John, written in Farsi in 2014, 2015. I would give anything to get my hands in that document, because guess who that came from? Wow. And the man's obviously becomes a Christian. So I do a lot of stuff about talk about jihadis and radical Islam and all this, and so every now and then a Muslim will write me and want to argue religion, which I won't do because there's no point in it. And I just tell the guy, I said, have you actually read the Gospel of John? No, it's from Satan. Well, how do you know it's from Satan? Because I was told that. Well, who told you, and why do you believe that? So immediately try to challenge that, but they won't read it for the most part. So what I'll do is I'll answer back in my email. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. I'll start quoting from the Gospel of John. So now they're going to read it, whether they like it or not, and they can, try to deal with that. Look, Yeshua is for everyone. It's not a westernized deal or the white man's deal or anybody else's. It's the entire planet. Everyone on this planet needs a redeemer. Muslims need redeemers. And that's why many Muslims are converting to Christianity, and that under penalty of death if they're found out. So there's a revival going on in Iran.
Well, that's really amazing, and I think that's really exciting for our audience to hear, because you hear so much and you see so much of the radicalization of the mullahs and the ayatollahs and the whole Iranian government. So I think that's encouraging to our audience. Our time is fleeting, so I'll just have one more question in this segment. In your Days of Chaos DVD, you also interviewed a captain in the Israel Defense Forces. He talked about the threat of Hamas to Israel. Most of us know that Hamas is a prominent terrorist group in the Middle East, and they are now in control of the Gaza Strip. So why doesn't Israel just go in to the Gaza Strip, invade it, and wipe out Hamas? I'm sure they could do that very easily.
I think that's what's going to happen. I've actually written about this. Israel is being threatened by those who pose an existential threat to her. It's Hezbollah in the north with well over 110, 115,000 rockets, depending on which stats you want to believe. I put the number much higher. I put the number around 150. Hamas, which are fueled by the Muslim Brotherhood, radical elements of Islam, and it's not going away. Then you've got the radical fractions all throughout Syria, and now you've got the newcomer ISIS to the east. And then, of course, you've got Iran, which has threatened Israel numerous times. Benjamin Netanyahu stood up and glared at the UN, just stared them down in silence a short while ago, because basically telling them what's coming to my country will eventually come to yours. And he's right. This type of radical Islam is being exported all over the world, and certainly is happening even now in Europe. People go, nothing happened with the blood moons last year. Are you kidding me? The Russians are now in the Middle East, which is unprecedented. And now we've got 1 million Muslims running out through Europe. I mean, can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up. So Israel has one choice eventually. She's got to cut the heads off the snakes. And that is Hamas, Hezbollah, whatever she's got to do and clean up in Syria. She's probably going to hit the Bashir reactor in Iran. She's got to go after ISIS. This could be the Psalm 83 war. This would expand her borders back into the original land grant.
Wow, that's really exciting. Another exciting thing that we're seeing with our own eyes today.
Yeah.
And I think that, foreshadowing another fulfillment of Bible prophecy, I think that's very exciting. David, I think you have some more questions for LA.
Yeah, moving our emphasis back to the homeland, so to speak, the domestic issues. Jesus predicted at the end of this present age that it would be characterized by, among other things, famines and pestilences. Your film deals with an unusual pestilence that has to do with the mysterious and massive collapse or reduction in the bee population in recent years. What do you think is causing this, L.A., and how could this fit into the end-time prophetic scenario?
Well, first of all, you're talking about the colony collapse disorder. And there are hives where a beekeeper will come out and the entire hives are just gone, just decimated. There's nothing left at all. And there's been a lot of, was it the cell towers? Is it pesticides? Well, depending on who you talk to. Necropsies has been done to the bees. And what recent studies have shown, the aluminum factor is 100 times greater than what it should be in a bee. We believe, and I realize I should be wearing my tinfoil hat here, even on the radio, but most people don't understand that we are being sprayed. And this gets into the whole chemtrail thing, which I realize, that's just preposterous. When was the last time, you go back 40 years, show me one chemtrail. They don't exist. Now the sky is crisscrossed with them. There are places, and I went skiing up in Mammoth for my 65th birthday, okay? I'm on the chairlift, and the first day I was there, not a cloud in the sky. Blue sky, just amazing. No planes, because it's Mammoth. Next day, the entire sky is spider-webbed Planes are spraying like crazy, laying down these, look, chemtrails, when the jet goes by, they turn on the spray. These things billow out. They linger in the air for hours. When was the last time anyone saw a contrail do that? I've got photographs of planes, spraying and other planes flying. The normal jet, there's a contrail. It evaporates. The chemtrail spreads out, and the whole sky becomes milky white, like milky silver. By the way, the Native Americans, when we talked about this too, also have a prophecy, one of their prophecies, that talk about in the end times that the sky will be crisscrossed like spider webs. And we think it may tie back into chemtrails.
I had the privilege of interviewing Michael Murphy not terribly long ago. He is the filmmaker of two wonderful films, What in the World Are They Spraying?
Yes, I've seen that, sure.
And Why in the World Are They Spraying? And he would concur. He in his films, he interviews experts.
Yeah.
And they're all saying it's the chemtrails. It's the geoengineering that pours tons of aluminum, barium, and strontium into the atmosphere, and it's having a devastating effect on the bees, on our soil, and on humans, and also contributes to the explosion in Alzheimer's in human beings.
I agree.
So you can imagine the effect that it has on these tiny little bees as they're being bombarded with these elements.
And what we see in the bees is the same type of Alzheimer's, where they'll see bees that are alive, but they don't know where they are, and they can't get back to the hive. I want to tell you about how incredible, something positive here, how wonderfully this creation that we have. We spoke to a beekeeper. He's in Watchers 9, and he gave us a lot of history about when a bee goes through all these different stages of life. And they start in the hive, and they come out of the little cell, and the first thing that they begin to do is, of course, they eat and stuff and get stronger. Then they start to take care of other bees in those cells, and they begin to work through different parts of the hive. Well, finally, they guard the hive, so they're out in front. This is part of the last stages of what they do. They guard the hive, but they still have not yet flown. They're not airborne yet. They're just guarding the entrance. At some point in time, and don't ask me how this happens, they're triggered, and a bee takes his first, or her first solo flight. And what's amazing about this is they begin to spiral, excelsior. They do these spirals, and they go up, and this has all been recorded. Scientists have recorded this. And the bee will photograph everything. They go high up in the sky, and they photograph the entire landmass all around them. This becomes a digital map somehow that they access, and that's how they get back to their hive, not anyone else's hive, because that bee that's protecting the hive knows only the bees from its hive can come in. No other bees. It's absolutely astounding. And it begs the question. I mean, this thing only lives for what, 6 to 8 weeks? Then it's gone? And yet it's so sophisticated, and we're talking like built-in GoPro cameras, as this thing spirals way up in the sky, photographs everything, and a bee's range can be up to 5 miles from the hive. I mean, that is absolutely astounding.
Wow.
Could we find our way back 5 miles? I don't think so.
Well, LA, this sounds even more sophisticated than these modern drones that are being used for surveillance purposes. God's drone program is
way more sophisticated.
Way more sophisticated. So it's amazing. One last area that I'd like to deal with is, along with the massive bee die-off and the collapse of their colonies, we're seeing an unprecedented drought in the West. Now, you live in California, so you've seen this up close. Mm-hmm. Tell us how bad things are and what could be some of the cascading effects if this drought worsens.
There used to be a lake. I live in the Santa Monica Mountains, about 1,000 feet above sea level. And there was a lake about another 300 feet, 400 feet above where I am. And this lake was a tourist spot. It's a small little lake. You guys would call it a pond. But it's a small little lake, and people come up there. This lake was also a year-round freshwater supply, and deer would come and feed the animals and all this. All that's gone. In fact, we filmed Andy Jones on the dry lake. That's where we filmed them, to show people we're here in a dry lake. I'm not making this stuff up. And what was incredible about it, Andy told us that we are in 8 years of drought, and if we don't get water soon, the Colorado River, which provides electricity because of the Hoover Dam and some other dams on it to about 40 million people. You don't get water if the turbines don't turn. Now what? And that not being talked about, we cover it in Watchers, but no one else is touching the subject because it's doom and gloom and fear. This is a real serious problem. And so far, in this year's season of rainfall, we've had 2 major storms. We're still in deep water here.
Wow. Well, again, it reminds us of what Jesus said about famines and pestilences, with the bee collapse. Of course,
Sure.
they are so vital in God's program in terms of, pollinating. Human life really wouldn't exist if the bee population was eradicated.
I agree.
So we've got that danger. We also have the worsening drought. Some are saying it's a 1,000-year drought that's taking place. And both of those will create massive famine across the world. So these are just a few of the subjects that you deal with in your DVD and the book, Days of Chaos. It's certainly, the content certainly lives up to the title. There's no hyperbole
Thank
here.
you.
These are
Appreciate
chaotic days in
they
which
are.
we live, unprecedented. Well, we're out of time for today. L.A., thanks for being on the broadcast today. We will continue this discussion next week. We have been talking with L.A. Marzulli about his amazing new book and DVD, both entitled Days of Chaos. This thorough book has 21 chapters, is nearly 300 pages in length, thoroughly documented and footnoted. The companion DVD is fast-paced, shocking, and nearly 2 hours long. You will want to have both to share with family and friends. And now Jerry Giltner will share how you can obtain Days of Chaos.
Thanks, Brother David. Friends, you don't want to miss this opportunity to get your own personal copy of the book and DVD, Days of Chaos. Both are available through Southwest Prophecy Ministries by calling, writing, or visiting our website. The book and DVD are companions that are offered separately or together. Individually, they'll be sent for an offering of $25, but when you get both at the same time, the gift amount is only $40. To get them, call 1-405-604-5975. The web address is SWPM.us, or write to Box 58043, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73157. These resources answer such present-day questions as, will the economy collapse? Is our government planning a move against its own citizens? Why is Israel rushing to build the third temple? And more. Days of Chaos provides not only answers to those questions, but what you can do to be prepared for the fulfillment of prophecy. Again, get the 289-page book or the 110-minute DVD. Individually, they'll be sent for an offering of $25, but when you get both at the same time, the gift amount is only $40. Phone 1-405-604-5975. Web address swpm.us. Or write to Box 58043, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73157. Be sure to let us know the station you heard this program over. And plan right now to be here next weekend at this time for Part 2 in this intriguing set of programs as we help you occupy till Jesus comes.